Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com. Okay, everybody, I am here with about as special a guest on Past the Wire TV as we could possibly have. A true legend in horse racing, one of the most accomplished riders, a winner of over 3,000 races, member of the Canadian Hall of Fame, member of the United States Hall of Fame. Well-deserved in both, and the rider of many great horses, of course, notably Secretariat, and many others that we'll talk about. But Ron Turcotte, thank you so much for joining me on Past the Wire TV. It's absolutely a privilege to have you.
It's my pleasure, John.
No, it's really my pleasure, and there's so much to talk about with you. You are such an accomplished rider, such an inspiration, and such a an interesting man. So I'm going to test your memory a little bit. I'm going to take you back to 19.
Okay, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, John. I got something in front of me there. It says this meeting is being recorded.
Yes.
Got it, or leave meeting.
Just say got it.
Got it.
You got it.
There. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to test your memory. I'm going to take you back to 1962 Fort Erie Racetrack.
April 9, 1962.
A horse named Pheasant Lane. Pheasant Lane. You remember that horse? And if you do, tell me why.
Very well. It turned out it was on a muddy track that day, and he stumbled leaving the gate. He had an awful lot of speed, but that was my first winner.
First winner ever, Ron Turcotte, 1962 Fort Erie, Pheasant Lane, and you. This is 2021, and you still remember him and remember the race.
Oh yes, I remember him very well. That was at Fort Erie across from Buffalo.
Now,
Buffalo, New York.
You win. You are obviously an apprentice. You win a race on a horse named Pheasant Lane, an older gelding, I believe. Fort Erie Racetrack, not really a major circuit. Any idea in your mind at that point that you were going to possibly have the kind of career that you did, where you're in the, top riders of all time? Any thought like that go through your mind as a young man like that?
No, but when I started galloping horses and working horses, I had a lot of confidence in my judgment, Judge of Pays, and the trainer would tell me to work a horse a certain distance, a certain time, and I'd come very close to it and right on it. So he had a lot of confidence in me, and I had a lot of confidence in the trainer. And the little Speedy, we used to all him Speedy Gonzalez because he was real fast. But when you still believe in the gate there, I didn't know whether if he's going to come good from behind in the mud like that, and he did. He was only a 3-year-old. That was only his second race, I believe.
Now, you don't exactly come from a racing family. I know your brother rode, but when you were a kid, my understanding is you came from a big family, and one day you just decide to pack it up, head to Toronto, became a hot walker, and ultimately became a Hall of Famer. Is that true? And how did that whole transition happen?
Yeah, that happened. I quit school at age 14 and started working with my dad cutting lumber. And I was the horseman in the family. I had been taking care of the horses since I'm big enough to do it. And I was at the barn. I love horses. And I learned from the bottom up. My dad taught me. I was no older than 14 when he taught me how to shoe horses, and I had, like I said, I had a very good teacher as far as horsemanship.
Now, so you actually know how to shoe a horse. You were a hot walker. You were a groom. You really worked from the bottom up to get to where you were. Is that correct?
Yes, and I
And
left there to go. My brother had left the year before and went to Ontario, and was working on roofing houses, and he was doing so much better than me money wise. And he came back home with a pretty nice car, old car, but it was a nice car. And so he was making much more money. And that's when I decided, well, first of all, they were talking about bringing machinery in the wood to cut lumber, haul lumber, and all that. At that time, see, we used to snake the logs through the lumber, through the forest, to the main road, and where a truck could pick them up. And then in the wintertime, we could haul them with a set of bobsled. So it was a different story than today. It was
you
all
know,
horses.
I'm going to throw something interesting out there to you and just get your take on it because I think it's very interesting. Obviously, riding a horse as famous as Secretariat and as accomplished as Secretariat and with the kind of reputation that Secretariat has is any jockey's dream. I mean, Triple Crown, Kentucky Derby, the Marlboro Cup, which is back then was the equivalent, I would say, of the Breeders' Cup Classic today. Uh, I mean, it made you really a household name in racing. But in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this is an unpopular opinion, I think it also hurt your career in a way, and I'll tell you why. You're remembered as Secretariat's jockey, but you have done so much more and ridden so many great horses that people don't even realize. And I'll throw one out there. I mean, how many people know that as a bug boy, Ron Turcotte broke Northern Dancer's maiden? Not a lot of
Well,
people.
I didn't only break his maiden. I rode him I was his regular rider as a 2-year-old, and
Exactly.
I won the futurity, and I then Loro is going to the United States, and he decided to use an American. He always wanted to get an American rider on his horses anyway.
Really interesting. Did that have anything to do with you ultimately deciding to come to America to ride? Because you didn't stay in Canada as a rider very long, only a couple of years until you decided to come over here.
Yes, I was leading rider in 1962 and rode Horse of the Year. 1962, I picked him up in the middle of the summer, and at the end of the year, he was leading. He was the champion horse, Crafty Lace, and I was leading rider Canada. And I came back the following year. I was leading rider of Canada. Well, at the time there it was in October 10. I left Toronto. I was 100 winners in front of the second leading rider, and I had clinched the title for champion jockey in Canada, and that's when I left and went to Maryland.
Yeah.
And got very lucky in Maryland. I was leading rider at Laurel and Pimlico in the fall, the last two meetings. And
And it
then
didn't take long. And I think it was 1965 when you won Maryland's biggest race, the Preakness, on Tom Rolfe.
yes, I picked him up in 1964 at Delaware Park. I was leading rider at Delaware Park, and in 1964, and I just got the mount on him there, and then I stayed with him. I won many state races with him. I was third in the Derby with him, and second in the. I mean, won the Preakness, and second in the Belmont.
Yeah, no,
So we finished 1, 2, 3.
your record in the in the American Triple Crown Classics is unbelievable. Like you said, Tom Rolfe second in the Derby and the Belmont, win the Preakness. I think you won what 5 out of 6 in a row between Riva Ridge and Secretariat. And I've got to ask you this because this has always been my opinion. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong or you don't agree, but I believe that had it not rained in Maryland in 1971 when Riva Ridge ran in the Preakness and lost that race to a horse named BBB, if I remember correctly. Riva Ridge would have won the Triple Crown for Meadow Stable, Lucien Lauren, and Ron Turcotte the year before Secretariat.
Definitely.
Really?
Definitely. He had been champion. He had been champion 2-year-old. He had saved the farm by being all the money he won, over 500,000 at that time.
The movie said Secretariat saved the farm, and I always said that can't be true because the year before they had Riva Ridge. He had to be the one that saved the farm.
Yes, Riva Ridge and Uppercase, a horse nobody heard of. Uppercase won the Florida Derby and the Wood Memorial, and that helped. Those were 2 big preps for the Derby. Were both $100,000, and at that time that was a lot of money, and that helped save the farm.
Yeah, no, I kind of always thought that and thought there were a lot of inaccuracies in that movie. One of the things I thought that was accurate about that movie was that you were portrayed as a very tough guy. I mean, you were portrayed as a tough guy. And I remember going to the races, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but going to the races in the early 70s, spending every August up there for Saratoga, and then going every Saturday and Sunday, all during the year to Belmont and even Aqueduct. I remember you riding on a regular basis and always being known as a very tough rider and a strong finisher. But it always looked to me that there was kind of like a clique of Spanish riders, and they were great riders. I mean, Baeza, Cordero, Vasquez, even guys that weren't as well known, like Angel Santiago and just guys like that were tough, hard riders. And they kind of had a little clique that you as a Canadian weren't really a part of. And I thought that made things tougher for you. And you never backed down and took a back seat to any of them. And I always, as a fan, that's how it looked to me. And I always respected and admired you for it. Was that how it was? Was it like that, or am I off base on that?
No, you're right. Don't forget Yakaza.
Yakaza too. Yeah, right.
Yeah. But I always thought that I could ride with anybody. Everywhere I went, I was leading rider before I got to New York, and then I finished the year after I got to New York, after the Saratoga meeting. When we went back to New York, the Belmont wasn't built, and they were putting up a new Belmont. They had torn down the old one, and I won the last 2 meetings in New York. So that made me leading rider pretty well everywhere I went in 65. 64, I should say.
Now, another thing I always found interesting is, Secretariat, who propelled your name to stardom, never really turned out to be a great sire, but you did ride horses that did, like Northern Dancer turned out to be one of the most prolific sires in racing. Tom Rolfe, that bloodline was superb for as long as it went on. And I mean,
it was by Rebo.
Right, by Rebo. So just, I mean, you rode some horses that had a profound impact for many years forward. Breeding. Anything that you ever felt as a horseman or as a rider in what makes a horse become a great sire. Like Secretariat, no arguing, he was a great horse, but wasn't a great sire. But you rode horses that were both. Is there a difference, or is there something that, as a rider, or in the feel of a horse, or the way they run, or something that you could say, you know what? When I see this, I kind of know or feel like they're going to be a good sire, and when I see this, I think they're not. Anything at all like that, or no?
No, not for the breeding end, not for the breeding end of it. But when you see a horse in his build and the way he goes in the morning when you work him, you have a pretty good idea what kind of horse he's going to be. But as far as for breeding and producing great horses, that was beyond me.
Okay, just checking. I don't like to leave any stone unturned when I've got somebody as knowledgeable and as experienced as you on the show. Now, another horse I got to ask you about, because it's one of my personal favorites, and I think one of the best race mares that I ever personally saw run, and that's Shuvee. And I know you rode Shuvee plenty of times, and she, in my opinion, was just an unbelievable race mare. What can you tell me about Shuvee?
I really thought that Shuvee was really one of the greatest mare of our time. She would run against the boys. Would go 2 miles against the boys and win. She won 2 Gold Cup, and she probably wasn't the easiest mare in the world to ride, because when she made the lead, she kind of hesitated and she didn't want to be whipped. Uh, but that was fine. She was nice, and all they
She
had to
used
do was
to, if memory serves correct, she was one of the first horses I saw that she used to swish her tail a lot down the lane, correct?
yes, even if you chirped to her, she would switch her tail.
Wow.
You didn't
Yeah,
have to
no.
hit her or anything. She would switch her tail.
Yeah, that's coming back to me now. Now, another great one you rode. I don't know. I don't remember how many times you rode her. I don't think you rode her a lot, but you rode Dahlia, who was an international superstar,
Yes, yes, I won the Man of War with her. She ran good.
against the boys also.
Yes, right. And I came back. Well, they took me off after that race because I wouldn't say that she was the greatest horse that I ever rode. The owner
Really?
and the trainer were after me to tell me that. See, I always stop at the barn after I won a big race with a horse. I'd stop at the barn, check on the horse and see how he was doing. And they happened to be there, and they kept telling me to tell the sports writer that she was the greatest horse I ever rode. And I couldn't tell them that because I had just rode Secretariat the year before, prior to that, and Secretariat held a record for the Man of War state.
Right.
So I think they got kind of mad at me. They told my agent that it says he wouldn't do what we asked him to do, and it says Pickett's going to ride her down in the Washington D.C. International. Originally, he was supposed to come down and ride her to Man of War, but with her being quarantined, they didn't think that she was fit enough. So they put me on her, and she won.
Yeah.
But I pick up a filly that I beat her with in the Washington D.C. International.
Who was that?
Uh, she was champion filly. George Velasquez used to ride her all the time. She had broke the record before Secretariat did. Top broke the world record in the Marlboro Cup for
Wow.
about 1:18. I can't remember her name now. She was a
I'll look it
great,
up.
great filly.
Yeah, no, I'll look it up. That's really interesting. So you were able to beat Dahlia on a horse you picked up, and they took you off because you wouldn't say she was the best you rode the year after Secretariat. That was a big ask. I mean, that's not like a little ask. That was a big ask, in my opinion.
And yes, and that was kind of a grudge thing. I bagged the pace very slow, and Pink looked back, and Piggott was strangling Dahlia. And I stayed that way all along, and I just let her run the last 3/8 of a mile. And Dahlia was quite a ways back. She had a lot of ground to make up. So that was a very satisfactory ride.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you were. That's a tough way to lose a horse like Dahlia. Um,
Yeah.
Another great one you rode that I don't think you rode him that day, but he was in the what we call the race of the century when Damascus, Buck Passer, and Dr. Fager ran. But you rode Damascus as well.
Yes, I rode Damascus. I won with him in the Delaware, and then I rode him back in California the following year. Shoemaker got hurt. Remember, he missed a year riding, I think. And I I rode him. I just got beat. Can't remember the horse that beat me. Anyway, I only got beat a head, I believe, a nose or a head. And he was the only horse running without shoes on a very muddy track. And he came back missing 3 shoes. And he
Wow.
had one sideways that cut him up a little bit. Otherwise, you would see, nobody knows that because Frank Whiteley never told anybody that. He told me to keep my mouth shut about that.
Is this the first? So nobody knows that Damascus lost the 3 shoes in that race, huh?
Not too many, no.
Wow, interesting. What about arts and letters? Another great.
Yes, he was a good one too. And but I wasn't riding all that man's horses there. I believe that's when Baeza got on him.
Right. Now,
then I came back following after that, and I started riding a lot of horses for Elliot Birch, Mr. Mellon. Yes.
right. Now,
I was riding
interesting.
a great horse like the great horse like Fort Marcy, for example,
Right.
and the 3-year-old was running against Riva Ridge.
Key to the Mint.
Casey Devine, I had a choice to ride him, but I picked Riva Ridge over him. And when he beat Riva Ridge, I was in the mud.
Right. But Key to the Mint was Key to the Mint loved the mud, I remember. And like you said earlier, Riva Ridge didn't like it.
Yeah, I don't think he made it a better horse, but he didn't mind it as much as Riva Ridge. Riva Ridge plain couldn't handle it.
Really interesting. So many great horses. Even I remember one I bet on that you rode. I want to say he was a Green Tree horse, Hatchet Man. Remember Hatchet Man?
Yes, oh yes. Yeah, I rode quite a few good horses for Green Tree.
Yeah, no, I remember. Do you still follow racing today, or do you not pay as much attention?
Well, the way they televise it and then you never know when they're on. And lately, I don't watch it as much. I used to watch it all the time. When they were steadily on one channel or something, you knew exactly when they were going to run. And I always cleared my day to be around to watch the race.
Right. You were a race rider. You were known as being a very, very tough race rider. Do you have any opinion on whether or not the race riding today is tougher than it was years ago when you were riding?
Well, I thought that we rode closer together. There was a bunch of good riders, great riders, the old timers. You had Bill Hartack, you had the little General Howard Grant. He was a great rider. Bill Bolin was riding at the time. And like I said, we mentioned them before, Spanish riders. They were all great riders. And when you go out there, you don't look who's riding what. You just, you just have your mind on your horse and his past performance and the horse you're going to ride, past performance, and check the other horses, and you have an idea how the race is going to break out. But I used to go out there thinking I was going to win every one of them. And some of them was, long shot, and I used to say, well, the horse can't read, so you don't know what odds they got on him.
This is true. This is true. Uh, Canadian Hall of Fame, American Hall of Fame, two Kentucky Derbies, a Triple Crown. Which of all your accomplishments do you look back on today, all these years later, with the most satisfaction? Which one means the most to Ron Turcotte?
Well, I love Riva Ridge very much.
Really?
Yes, when I picked him up as a regular mount, he was a very timid horse, and I asked Lucien to give me a month with him to reschool him. Teach him that the other horse were no monsters and all that. He could be among the other horse. So I used two horses, one each side, and had them bump me a little bit, and then I coaxed him back in where he should be, and he really, I I was very very proud of him
Is
that
he
he overcame his fear and won my first Kentucky Derby.
is he is
And
he is he the one you'd have to say is your favorite because of that?
uh, well, like I said, I love him very much. He's got a special place in my heart.
Really?
Um, but after having ridden Secretariat, you can't say, well, he was the greatest horse. But I love Secretariat the same. He was the pinnacle of my career. He brought me
Yeah.
right to the top. He was a great horse, and I started getting on him when he came to the racetrack from Meadow Stable, and schooled him from the time he came to the track. And I couldn't ride him the first time because Lucien um, wanted to run him that certain day, and I was riding Summer Gas for Elliot Birch, a great
Right.
filly. She had won all the big races, the 3-year-old races. She had won. We just finished winning the Black Eyed Susan with him, and he entered her. Well, all right. I'll start from the start. I was in California riding Riva Ridge in the Hollywood Gold Cup, and after the race, when he took me to the airport, he kept asking me to be there on the 4th of July, the first day, but not the 4th of July, but the following Saturday. But I told him I couldn't. I said, "Can you find another race for him? I want to ride him the first time." Because I
Right.
had done him, I had done all his workouts and that, and I didn't think he should get beat. So he asked me, "Well, who am I going to put on?" I says, "Oh, you can put the kid on, Feliciano, Paul
Right.
Feliciano." And he rode him, and he got hit by a horse called Quebec. That's Lucien comes from Quebec. But anyway, uh, he hit himself and got hurt his splint bone. But he still ran big. If he had any room to run down the stretch, he would have won. He came back and he won with him. And then when I started riding him, running him and started, told you he won the rest of the year with winning everything he ran. But he got disqualified in Champagne, and I thought it was an awful thing to disqualify him because he got hit by. There was a horse.
Was it
Pink
Champagne
Hill.
Charlie, maybe?
Pink Hill was riding that horse, and he rode him in California after that. He ran against Shame. He was favored against Shame.
Is it Shecky Green maybe, or?
Let's see, his name was. Should be when you get my age, now you get to forget some.
I
Then
forget him too, don't worry.
Al Scotty was training him in New York.
Okay.
When I beat him the first time was at Saratoga, he was favored over me, over Secretariat.
Okay.
And I came between two horses there. That's where everybody was impressed. Secretariat would run between horses and that. And that was the first time that I wrote, not doing a second time, but the first time Secretariat was not favored.
Wow, interesting. Let
Yeah.
me ask you a question. You may tell me I'm nuts. Okay, I always thought that as good as Secretary, or as great as he was, I always thought he might have been a better turf horse.
Oh, he was definitely. He was
Wow. Okay.
definitely, but I said 10 to 15 Lend better horse. That's how
Wow.
great he was. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I always thought that, and I said people are going to think I'm nuts if I say I think Secretariat was a better grass horse, but that's how I saw it.
Yeah, I saw it the same way. I saw it. I saw that the first time I worked him on the grass.
Right.
You work 5/8 of a mile faster than a horse could run on the grass, and
Wow.
and all his races and his workouts on the grass was outstanding.
Interesting. Interesting. Now, the day he got beat by Onion, you were on the inside. Jacinto Vasquez was on the outside down the lane. I always thought it was just a situation where Onion was an older horse. He was coming out of some sprints, and he, had the lead. And Secretariat was kind of on the inside and just didn't have the ideal trip. But that's not correct. There's a little more to it than that. That at the time I wasn't aware of.
There was a lot more to it. Fact, the reason he got beat, first of all, I begged Lucien for a week not to run the horse. The horse worked very good the Saturday before that race, the Whitney. Matter of fact, he broke the record in the workout, but the track was washed out. So I didn't count that he should have broke the track record because he was going too easy. But on Monday, he came up with some kind of flu. He was sick. He was running a temperature between 2 and 5 for a full week. And you could see he was dragging his feet. He was just, I didn't want to see him run. I asked Lucien not to run him and went to the point of begging him not to run the horse. And he told me, he said, well, you don't have to ride him. He said, the other jocks are breaking their arms to ride him. I said, no, I will ride him to protect him. Because you run a horse that's sick, he might be finished to the end of the year and maybe for his whole career,
Right.
And anyway,
he was still willing to run him. Huh?
He ran him. He came back to the barn with 105-degree fever.
Wow. Did he ever tell you were right, Ron? I should have listened to you.
No, they weren't that kind.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they decide the last minute to run a horse. Like, for example, in the Woodward, we were training for the Man of War, and they decided to run Secretariat in the Woodward. And I told him he's not ready, and he didn't even get a blowout for the race. And he's the kind of horse that you had to work him hard. He was a tough horse. He had an iron constitution, and he wasn't the same horse at all if you didn't work him out like that. So I knew the horse because I was on him all the time, and didn't always work out. So I really knew the horse better than the owner and the trainer. And I knew when he was ready to run and when he was not. And that horse should have been undefeated. The
Uh,
only time he got beat is when they just pop him in the race before he was ready or ran him sick.
you know, interesting enough, you rode quite a few horses for Frank Pancho Martin over the years, who trained Sham, who was kind of, Secretariat's rival in those Triple Crown races. What can you tell me about Frank Pancho Martin and your relationship with him?
I love Frank Martin. I first met him when I moved to an apartment in Van Nuys Expressway, New York. You live in that apartment. I get to see him a lot there. And whenever he asked me to go out of town, he rode a lot of Spanish Rider when he was in New York, and he gave me a ride now and then. But um, I was winning. He always gave me good mounts whenever I rode for him, and whenever he sent me out of town to ride a horse for him, they always won. And he was the most generous trainer I've ever seen. He always paid all your expenses when you travel, and take you out to dinner, and he was great. Yeah. Now I don't remember exactly how many years he used to buy me. I used to smoke big Cuban cigars,
Right.
and he used to give me a box every 2 or 3 weeks. He gave me a box of 50 cigars.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, he did that even after I got hurt. Whenever I went to New York, it says, "Oh, wait a minute! I never failed to stop by the barn and see him because I love Frank. He was a great trainer, great guy to ride for."
Yeah. Ron, you really you're an interesting man. You're a gentleman, and some of these stories are just fascinating. For someone like me, who's just a fan and student of the game, this stuff is great. One thing I got to ask you about that was in the news not too long ago, that I think we got to bring it out there. And I know from what I heard, it was rectified. But is it true that Ron Turcotte, the legend, the Triple Crown Hall of Fame winning Ron Turcotte, had an issue getting into Churchill Downs for a Kentucky Derby? Is that true, or is that something that's been blown out of proportion?
No, that's a true fact. I,
how does that
I,
work?
I managed to get a drive in and bypass the guard, and he was just waving at me. And but anyway, I went in front of the office and tried to get in to get my pass. My
Right.
pass was there. It was all done. Leonard Lusky had bought me my pass before, and all I had to do is pick it up. And but they wouldn't let me in. They told me to drive off and go across the street if I wanted to park.
Well, if anybody from Churchill Downs is listening, and I know some people from there do watch the show and read past the wire. I got to say, listen, when Ron Turcotte shows up at Churchill Downs is when you guys are supposed to roll out the red carpet and escort him in and treat him like the legend that he is. I mean, that's really comical when you think about it. But it is what it is. You know.
Being in a wheelchair is not. It's not really comical to go park across the street to go to see the races. And
Exactly. And I apologize. I didn't mean it that way at all. I think that you've been an inspiration to people in the way that you've handled your injury and what happened to you, which is probably the darkest side of our sport. And you've managed to handle that with grace, which I think is an inspiration to other people who face similar types of injuries, especially riders.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you, Ron. I think that's that might be from a humanitarian standpoint, your biggest contribution to racing is the inspiration for people to get through some of the most difficult types of adversities that they can face. And the toughest part of horse racing is those type of injuries. So I think the sport owes you a debt of gratitude for that, in addition to your accomplishments in the saddle.
Thank you.
No, thank you. And I think that's a good way to wrap it up, because I could keep you here all day, because I love these stories and love chatting. But I think we covered a lot about your career, which is it's beyond Hall of Fame worthy. If you really want to talk about it, your career puts you in the conversation of the greatest of all time of riders. I mean, there's a certain group of guys that belong in that conversation. And I think that your resume actually puts you there. And I would say, as an avid race watcher and student of the game, and someone who watched you ride competitively in your prime and on a day in and day out basis, I would say 100% you belong in that category. You were a strong finisher. You used to get down head and head, and you were as tough as anybody I ever saw on that racetrack.
Well, I thought I could ride as good as anybody. And somebody saw that, because I belong to 9 Hall of Fame.
Right.
So
Absolutely. And I think you were the first winner of that Avelino Gomez Award too.
yes.
Yes, I mean, just like I said,
Memorial Award. No, I've had a lot of awards and that, and rode with great riders.
over 3,000 wins, over 3,000 wins in a career that was cut short, over 3,000 wins and over $28 million in purses, in a time when that was just a phenomenal amount of money compared to what the purses are today. So I think that's, and it all started in 1962 with Pheasant Lane.
Yes.
Yeah. Ron.
And I should call that the golden years of racing. The money wasn't there like today.
No.
But it was a lot of fun to ride, and tough competition. And today they have tough competition too. Good riders, a lot of good riders.
Yeah, no, riders are always tough. I mean, pound for pound, toughest athletes, as tough as any athletes in the world, no question about it. And then you certainly were the epitome of that, and still are to this day, even getting on in years.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Ron, and thank you again for coming on the show. Absolute pleasure. Can't thank you enough. I mean, really, you were phenomenal to talk to.
Yeah. Another race that we didn't mention, that was winning the Manitoba Derby, Manitoba Centennial Derby.
Oh wait, right. That's when you met the Queen.
That's right. That's correct.
Right, you met the Queen.
Yeah.
What was it? Fanfreluche.
Fanfreluche, and she won. She won the Alabama that year. She won the Quebec Derby along with that, and she won many races. And she was tied for leading horse of North America at the time.
Yeah,
she was great for this. She was by Northern Dancer.
Right.
There's another one that I rode by Northern Dancer, was One for All. He won the Canadian Championship going a mile and 5/8 on the grass.
Okay, I'm not familiar with him. That's one I don't even know about.
Oh, well, he didn't, beside winning the Canadian Championship there. I don't know exactly. I knew that he had gone to Europe to run in the Prix de l'Arc, the Arc de Triomphe.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you ever
And
get
then,
a chance to ride in Europe? Did you ever ride any races over there?
yes, I rode in Africa, Rhodesia, Zimbabwe now. I rode in Hong Kong, but I didn't ride steady in no place. I just made some show in there with, in international races.
Right. And
Like we have a lot of top riders like Toro used to come there. Sandy Hawley used to go.
right.
And
Now, when Rudy first came to Toronto and was doing better than you, and then you became a jockey and became, in essence, a superstar, is that what made Rudy decide to become a jockey?
yes, I bought him. I bought him when I was riding in Delaware. I found a nice little horse. He was a painted horse, but he was really an Arabian horse. And so I bought him that horse, and he learned to ride on that horse, and he could really horseback. He could horseback as anybody, as well as anybody. Wherever he went, he done good until the booze got to him.
Yeah,
He had two problems. He had the booze and the woman, and many of them. And I guess
that's that's been the ruin of many a man.
yeah.
No question, no question about it.
But
And
he could race right.
yeah, no, I never got a chance to see him as much as I got to see you. But yeah, no, he was a tough rider himself.
Yeah, he won 6 races in one day in New York. He was only the third rider that I had won 6 races.
Didn't you have a
One day.
day? Didn't you have a day in Saratoga too one year where you won 4 or 5 in a day at Saratoga, if memory serves correct?
I was the first rider to win 5 races in a day, 2 years, twice.
At
2 years.
Saratoga, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
72, 73. I
Right.
won.
I remember I was there. I was a kid and I was there, and
Yeah.
that stuck in my.
Matter of fact, the Monday after the Secretariat got beat in the Whitney, I won 5 races. I made sure I kept him on the rail because he kept blaming the rail for Secretariat getting beat.
Right.
The rail, but I had won the previous race on the rail, and there was nothing wrong with the rail. They blamed the rail and stuff like that,
Right.
But we're the last one to be blamed. We're the last one on the spot. The
That
DC world. Yeah.
that's true still today. Riders always are the first one to get the blame.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a part of the sport that'll probably never change, Ron.
No, it never really bothered me because I knew that, if you get beat, I come back and I tell the trainer that, his horse didn't lose the race. If I rode a race bad, well, I mean, misjudged,
Right.
put it that way. Because I always give it 100% on every horse I rode. But Tom Rolfe, when I come back after getting beat in the Belmont, I told Frank Whiteley, I said, Tom Rolfe didn't lose the Belmont. I did.
Really?
He says, what do you mean? I says, I move a little too soon on him
Really?
because
Wow.
I knew the horse. I had been riding him, for 2 years, and I should have waited a little bit longer.
The Belmont always had that reputation too, as the kind of race where if you move a little too soon, a horse can come up a little short. It's always had that reputation.
Yes, but I learned very fast from that one race there because I had a lot of luck winning a mile and a half.
Right. No.
and going 2 miles too.
Yeah, back then the Jockey Club Gold Cup was 2 miles.
Yeah.
We ran a lot longer races back then than we do today for whatever reason. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you know one thing, those long races are easier on a horse that these sprints today. And in the sprints, the horse is chopping all the time, you know, trying to get traction, trying to get going, and it's hard on the horses.
Right.
While you come out the gate, you know, let your horse come out the gate and go uh, nice and long stride, and um, very seldom you see a horse break down going a mile and a half.
Interesting. So yeah, I guess they have time to kind of settle in and get into a nice rhythm and not so much all out for the entire way.
That's right. And the other thing we were talking about were the grass. Secretary loved the grass, and as far as that goes, he loved any kind of track. But the grass is much easier on turf. Is easier on a horse than dirt, in my opinion.
Did you have a preference to ride on dirt or grass, or it didn't matter to you?
It didn't matter to me now, whatever the horse likes. But I knew that I always felt that the grass was easier on a horse's leg than the dirt.
Interesting. Well, Ron, again, I mean, just can't thank you enough, man. It was really a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's very nice of you.
No, it's truly a pleasure, truly an outstanding career. I hope you enjoyed the show and chatting, and maybe we can do it again sometime and talk about some things that we didn't get to on this show, because your list of accomplishments just goes, you know, on and on and on and on.
Thank you.
All right, thank
And
you.
well, doing interviews, you know, with guys like you is a pleasure, because you know what you're talking about, and you know the right question to ask, and it's very nice. My
Well,
pleasure.
coming from you, that means quite a bit to me. Made my day. I truly appreciate that, Ron. You're a gentleman, and I thank you for saying that.
Thank you, Jonathan.
All right, I'll end the recording now, and then we can say goodbye off the record.
Okay.
Nobody does it better.